Hello, everyone, and welcome for another session of Yoga Readers. This is our fourth session where we will be rereading and discussing part 3 of Tree of Yoga by B.K.S. Iyengar. For those of you who are joining us today for the first time, Yoga Readers is a global online community of and some of us are teachers as well, who are interested in reading about yoga, discussing it with others, so not to keep it only. So creating a dialogue with other people and, of course, connecting what we read to our practice. That's the part of gaining insight from what we read from the teachings of BKS Iyengar. My name is Agi Wittich. I've written my PhD on Iyengar Yoga as part of the Department of Comparative Religions in the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and I've been researching yoga for a long time now on the mat and academically as well. So I'm very happy to see you all here in our live session. And I'm also happy with those watching us on the recording. So I've been told by people who are watching on the recording how it's easier for them not to commit to a certain day and time, but that they can watch whenever it's convenient for them. So I'm really pro that approach because we are all reading in our own time. But at the same time, it's nice to have a discussion, or at least those who are watching the recording can hear my ideas and the participants' ideas regarding what we read. So it's another way of creating an online community. So before I start with the summary, and then we go to the close reading and the group discussion, I would like to ask you all, what was your primary interest in yoga? Now, you can write it in the chat, so briefly, like one word or two words. Did you come initially? Then another interesting question is to ask, why did you stay? But what was the motivation that drove you to start yoga? Was it something related to physical health? Was it like fitness related motivation? Was it a mental wellness issue or perhaps stress relief? Was it the aspiration for a spiritual advancement or growth? Did you seek therapeutic benefits, or did you look for professional development as teachers? So you can write it in the chat. Karen said spirituality. That was my goal as well. But I find it that we are many times the minority, and people are drawn to it from different reasons. Now, when you ask them, why did you stay? So you came for your back pain, but then it was gone. Why did you stay? Then you get a very interesting, different answer. So Maria is saying that it felt good, but that's after your first experience. I'm asking, why did you start? Were you curious? Did a friend take you to the yoga class? Michal is saying a physical reason. Steph was looking for a low impact exercise. Excellent. And Sophie, after getting sick and interested in mind-body healing. Okay. Neck and upper back pain. Yeah. First it was health, but later the spiritual aspect has become more important. I was curious and stayed on because it gave me something else than sports. Yes, that's what I get when I ask people, why did you start? Why did you stay? The second question, but we won't go into it now. It's just to it was like an intro of why did Iyengar write about yoga and health? Why do you need to get a full section on it? And we know in the Tree of Yoga, it wasn't a book that B.K.S. Iyengar sat down to write, but it's a collection of his talks. So why did he talk about yoga and health so much? Is it something that people wanted to hear? Did it resonate with their initial motivation? So in the 70s and 80s, the fitness revolution was beginning. And the idea of yoga as a spiritual practice, I wouldn't say it was dying out, but fitness kind of took over. So in the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, and a bit the 70s, it was more about spirituality. So when people were asked who were the famous yoga teachers they know, some said the Dalai Lama, who is a Buddhist, right? I'm not saying yoga is not Buddhist, but he's not teaching asana for his living. So there was this confusion or mixture between Indian gurus or spiritual teachers and the practice or the teachings of yoga. And as we evolve in time, and these talks are taken from the, let's say, late 80s or mid 80s, it's becoming more related and understood to be part of the fitness and wellness regime. So it's not that you want to see God and therefore you practice yoga, whatever practice that means, could be just meditation or mantra or bhakti, but that you are trying to alleviate some pains you have, and therefore you're going to yoga. It's a very different aspect. Now, when you go to the mental wellness aspect to it, again, it merges back. But audience or people were more interested in the physical benefits of yoga. Natasha is saying that she has a book on yoga by accident and started because of curiosity when she was 14. I hear that a lot as well. So what do you know what book it was? Do you remember? If you remember what book it was, then okay, you can share it with us. It's also another interest of mine, like what was your first book that you saw? Some say autobiography of a yogi, and some say, well, it was Light on Yoga because they were looking for something with a lot of pictures in it and some explanations. And it's like a cooking book, right? Or you have these recipes of how to do a certain posture. Okay, so just to connect to what we are about to read, that Iyengar then in mid-80s already understood that people were looking for getting better, for getting more fit, to getting healthier. And I see it in a way that he used this initial motivation to draw them closer. And then once they're already practicing, then they understand that there are different layers to the practice. But the idea of drawing people closer. And I must say also that inside India, there was this concept, and a bit outside of India, when yoga was kind of circusy. It was more related to contortionism. It's when you bend your body in these bizarre ways, and it was there. It wasn't the mainstream thought of it. And in India, sometimes yoga practice was understood as body mortification. So it was taken more to asceticism and how yogis can transcend their bodies, but through, in a way, injuring themselves or harming themselves just to make a point that I am not my body. So if I do something to my body, then it's not that I do something for me because I'm the eternal self and so on. So this talk about saying that yoga is about health is kind of opposing stereotypes inside India that were older than before Iyengar started practicing. And they are talking to the Western world that was then more interested in a bit more fitness and wellness kind of subject. So now I come to the summary of what we read of part 3 of the Tree of Yoga. So in this part, as I said, Iyengar concentrates or focuses on the relationship between yoga and health. And he emphasizes that while healing isn't yoga's primary purpose, it's a significant beneficial byproduct or a good side effect. He explains the concept of holistic health, where true health in his eyes emerges from the integration of body, mind, and soul. It's not just about healing the body. And I always hear in this text body, mind, and soul, and not so much emotions. I feel like he wrote more about that in Light on Life, but that's just it's not in this part. So Iyengar emphasizes that these three aspects, body, mind, and soul, cannot be separated as they are inherently interconnected through our daily experience. Although our daily experience makes them seem distinct. Okay, so if you don't want to look for your soul, if it's not a spiritual goal, but you want to treat the body, it's okay, you can do it, but know that they are all interconnected. I think that's his main argument there. And it goes on, Iyengar goes on talking about yoga's therapeutical aspects, and he explains how asana and pranayama serve as the foundation for health benefits, and how these practices work through vital gates of the human system, so that both the respiratory system and the circulatory system. And when these two gates are, they function properly, they are open, then the body can naturally heal itself. So in a way, it's like a preventative therapy. And Iyengar compares this to opening windows, like in a stuffy room. And he says that proper practice of asana can remove blockages and allow energy to flow freely through the body. And he mentions some ailments like arthritis and respiratory problems as well. And there are many bits of different ailments that he mentions. Some are, for me, less comfortable to read about, but okay, it's part of it. If you read about health, you will read about ailments as well. Then there is a bit that we will not go into today, which is the relationship between yoga and Ayurveda, which is India's, let's say, traditional medicinal science. I will say that there are different systems of traditional medicine in India. Ayurveda is one of them, but it's, I think, the most popular one and the known one outside of India. And again, this book is taken from talks that he gave outside of India. So I think that's why he is mentioning Ayurveda. And both systems share similar goals, but approach healing differently. So he says that while yoga works through a psycho-spiritual approach, Ayurveda works through a psychophysiological approach. And he explains then that both systems recognize the importance of balancing different elements of the body, like earth, water, air, fire, and ether. These are the 5 elements. And in Ayurveda, these manifest as the 3 doshas, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, that you might have heard of as if you're practicing yoga. But yoga it focuses more on balancing the 3 gunas, which are sattva, rajas, and tamas. And in different books, he goes into comparing between these 2 lists of 3, the 3 doshas and the 3 gunas. But we need to understand that they're taken from different contexts. So it's nice to see how they relate, but we need to consider that we cannot overlay one on top of the other and say, okay, so sattva is vata. No, it's not, but we can see the similarities. So then he goes on to talk about the importance of proper teaching and practice. I feel like this part was more addressed to teachers of yoga, and especially when one is teaching for therapeutic purposes, which is, I think, all of the time, the proper way of teaching is really important. So he advises against applying techniques without a proper understanding and expertise. He warns about incorrect application that could worsen a certain condition. He mentions the kriyas, which are not very popular in Iyengar yoga, because he opposes these practices, but outside of yoga, they are really popular. So I don't know if you went into a yoga store that sells yoga props, if you've seen these neti pots that can cleanse your nose with water. I think that's the most popular kriya that is taught. Others are vomiting or using a cloth, a cotton cloth, to move between nostrils or to swallow. These are less popular today, but different kriyas are more popular in other traditions. And I think since you can go into a yoga related store and get a neti pot, it means that people buy them and use them and cleanse their nose through running water from one nostril to another. Okay. So he says we don't need to do that if it's not necessary, if we're not very, very sick. So he then mentions specific examples of working with various conditions, such as heart problems and glaucoma. And he just really emphasizes how we need to be careful, how we need to have an individualized approach and not like these protocols or prescriptive solutions to problems. And then he concludes with insights into the healing art of yoga. And he describes it as a subjective medical treatment that affects various vital centers in the body. He shares personal experiences of treating different conditions. So there is some, I think you read it, right? So he speaks about his own conditions and how he suffered from helping students. That could be an interesting subject among teachers to talk about if they catch something from their students. And he stresses that teachers should only teach what they really, really understand, what they experienced, something that is based on their own practice and not something that is just theoretically applied. Okay, so I think this is enough about the summary. So we are skipping. Do you want to add something before I go into the reading bit? Was it too much to take in this summary? Or was it clear to you because you already read it? Okay, good. Okay, good. I think it's different after you read it and you think about it, and then somebody like capsulates it for you, like these are the parts, and like, yeah, those are the parts about therapy. Okay, good. So we won't read the first bit, which is health as wholeness. So in that part, he writes about Patanjali's birth story that I've sent you in the newsletter. I don't know if you got it. I sent it yesterday. Yeah, you did get it. Sophie got it. Great. Did you see that I sent you a gift inside? No. So yesterday was B.K.S. Iyengar's birthday. And to commemorate his legacy, I recorded a talk about B.K.S. Iyengar's legacy. I posted it on Facebook, and I want to send it to you. So I sent it in the newsletter. I'm going to send it on our Facebook group and the WhatsApp group. So it's like about 1 hour talk from his birth to how he started teaching yoga, not because of spiritual reasons, by the way. How was his relationship with his first teacher? When did he start teaching? It's not like he had a teacher's training course and he wanted to have a career as a yoga teacher. And then how come he taught his wife and his daughter and his son? And why did he start teaching people from abroad, from outside of India? And then how come he wrote his books? And how did this thing happen from a boy in a small village in South India to us practicing yoga, Iyengar yoga from around the world in more than 80 countries? So I felt like I have to talk about that, and the link is in the newsletter, but I will attach it to the recording of this talk, and I'll put it on our WhatsApp group and Facebook group. So be sure to watch it.
But you have to register somewhere in order to watch it, right? Because I didn't.
Yes,
so I didn't see.
It's not. So it's not like the YouTube recordings. I've been told that people who are watching us on YouTube suffer from the commercials. So that's the thing on YouTube. So I wanted to put this talk so you can just watch it in a flow, but then where can I put it if not on YouTube? So I put it on my website, and in order for you to see it, you have to register, and that's it. It's still for free. So you can choose if you want or not, but that's the way to watch it.
Sorry, Aggie, can I just say, I'm not sure if I did get the newsletter. I thought you were talking about the thing you put up on Patanjali, you know, the sort of thing about Patanjali on Facebook. That's not what you're talking about, is it?
No, it's a talk about B.K.S. Iyengar's legacy.
Okay, I don't have a newsletter then, sorry. I'll look
Okay, so I'll check, and it will be sent today, tomorrow, if it was not sent yesterday. So I was just saying that we won't read the bit where he talks about Patanjali's story, but I did write about it to you, and it's in the newsletter as well. So I summarized for you the birth of Patanjali and the 3 important texts that he allegedly wrote, and how the 3 of them merge together into something holistic, for, as B.K.S. Iyengar sees it, as the 3 aspects that we need to really understand. Okay. So the bits about Patanjali are already out there, so I'm skipping it, and I'm skipping the part on yoga and Ayurveda. I already discussed this a bit. There is one part there that I really appreciated, is where Iyengar points out that yoga has its own vitamins, which are faith, courage, boldness, absorption, and memory with uninterrupted awareness. So I've never read this anywhere else, and I really thought about these like 5 vitamins. I always try to think, is something missing from this list? What is the relation between the different items on this list? So faith, courage, and boldness, I can see them working together. Absorption and memory with uninterrupted awareness feel like something else, but maybe, like, not maybe, he says you need all 5 of them as vitamins for your yoga. And he says that these qualities are essential for a true yoga practice. And he says that the not true yoga practice is just a physical satisfaction. That's not yoga, that's bhoga. Okay, so now we turn to what we will read, which is the practical approach, page 95. Yeah. So it's not the beginning of the chapter. And again, like before, if you want to read, just open your mic and read out.
I'll read if no one else is reading. I do enjoy reading.
Please.
Thank you, Aggie. I am often asked to give advice as to what exercises should be done by somebody suffering from this or that particular ailment. I don't give advice. I only say, work to get rid of the problems. Advice has no value. I cannot recommend particular exercises. How would I know what type of effect it would have? That has to be seen in each particular case. Otherwise, it would be like reading some books to know the effects of a medicine, then going to the pharmacy, buying the medicine and taking it. One cannot read remedial methods in yoga books and treat pupils who have come for relief on that basis. I cannot allow my pupils to do that. Books are only rough guides. If as a teacher you are confronted with particular medical problems, you have to seek advice from a senior teacher who has experience in handling such cases. Let them be your guides. Then you will be safe, and the pupils too will be in safe hands. Consider the example of somebody with ankylosing spondylitis. If it is an old case and the bones are fused, it is difficult to make substantial progress. It is like a well-developed tree which cannot be pruned, whereas a sapling can be pruned according to the direction you want it to grow. If the disease is fresh, it can be acted upon like the sapling, but if the disease is very old, you have to be content to control it and see that it does not spread further. If it is fresh, act soon to tame it, and if it is spreading, act soon also to see that it does not spread further. Common sense has to be applied. Alignment of the muscles with the bones, of the organs with the connecting fibers, of the inside, outside, back and front of the body, and the correct placement of the organs in their positions, all have to be observed while practicing. It's a really good analogy, the tree with the sapling.
We continue to the next page, if you are a teacher of yoga.
Shall I keep going or just...
Yes, please.
If you are a teacher of yoga, you should have some background knowledge of the causes of diseases, how they develop, and what parts of the body are affected. To be a yoga teacher is very difficult, though you may know at once that such and such a person is suffering from certain ailments. If you do not know how to tackle it directly, you have to work from the periphery by toning the muscles which are far away from the affected area. Make sure the muscles are toned all around, on top, at the bottom, at the side, then gradually come to work with the affected area. That way, risks are not involved. If the lumbar spine is affected, you have to train the cervical spine, the tailbone, the sacroiliac, and around the thoracic spine. Only then can you come to the affected area. If you treat the lumbar spine directly in such cases, you not only take a risk, but also ruin your own name and spoil the noble values and benefits of the art of yoga. A mature teacher of yoga attacks the spot directly if the disease is fresh. But if it is a long-standing problem, the teacher comes towards it from the other areas. First, make the other parts healthy, then come to the affected part to make that healthy in its turn. That is how yoga has to be taught in remedial cases.
Thank you. Okay, here clearly he was talking to yoga teachers, and he is emphasizing how we need to apply common sense while treating an ailment, and how a teacher has to have the right approach. So I always think about who was the audience for this bit that we just read, and I feel that there is not enough information about remedial classes. So it's kind of a lot of oral teachings in Iyengar yoga and not enough written material about what should be done, what should be the approach. So that's the core, I believe, in Iyengar yoga classes. When somebody comes with a severe ailment, we address them to remedial classes or therapy classes, whatever the name is according to the law in that country. And I believe that's the core where people who are really, really suffering, they meet that the therapeutical approach of Iyengar yoga with extensive props. And what do you think of this part? Are any of you teaching remedial classes? No.
No, I mean, it seems to be you have to be a senior teacher to do remedial, don't you?
Yep.
So I feel like it's a bit beyond where I'm at anyway.
Yes, I'm from Sweden, and we don't have any therapeutical classes in Sweden, as I know of, at least. So that's a difficult question, I think. With this, I always tell the students to, I mean, they have to be in touch with their doctors, or I mean, it's not a cure to go to yoga in that sense. Like they have to take advice elsewhere.
Though we know of stories like Nivedita Joshi, a teacher in Delhi, that when she first met B.K.S. Iyengar, she was in a wheelchair. And after some time with him, she started walking again. So that was a curable injury. It was not a miracle. And we do know of other miraculous stories.
Yes, I just mean that I'm not BKS Iyengar. In my classroom, I'm just like on the base level, and I won't go there. That's what I mean.
I would like to say something. May I, Aggie?
Yes.
Interestingly, in relation to what Maria said, I had a physical problem, a tear in the lab room. I didn't know it was a tear in the lab room because for 7 years I went to doctors in Israel and they could never find the problem. So it was not identified because MRI costs a lot of money. So what happened, I went to Pune and I stayed with Gita for weeks, and she worked on me. And although she was wonderful, nothing helped because the doctors didn't have the right understanding. Finally, after 7 years of suffering and Gita not helping me because she was not treating the right thing, the poor woman, I went and got an MRI, and of course, immediately I went to the hospital because, so it's interesting, even though Maria says she's relying on doctors don't always know what to do. So that's interesting too, whether we have, of course, that we work in remedial classes with ideas of doctors, but maybe they don't know, like what happened to me.
So you are reminding us the limitations.
Exactly.
Doctors have limitations. Yoga teachers have limitations. Even Gita Iyengar had a limitation.
She didn't have the right information. Of course, she couldn't help me. How could she help me? It was not what she thought.
I have an opposite story to say, that I had a knee injury and I was waiting for my MRI results, but all the doctors that I met said you have to have a surgery. And I had an appointment, and I just couldn't bear the thought of having a surgery. So I flew to Pune and I went to the remedial class, and I could walk on my knee. And I decided to go to Indian temples with many, many stairs. And I climbed the stairs up and down. Down was, of course, harder. But after a month in India, I came back to Israel and I felt like, why did the doctor say I have to have surgery? And then we got the MRI results that showed that I do not need to have a surgery. So that's another, the limitations of knowledge. So these knowable experts said that we have to schedule an appointment, we have to have the surgery without knowing, just by seeing the knee. And then in India, they were not afraid. I told them I'm supposed to have injury. They were not afraid to treat me. They were treating me as if I am before surgery, and then I didn't need it at the end. So we are limited by our knowledge. And maybe that's where faith needs to take us forward. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to page. I think I will skip a part on the kriyas. We will go to asana and the stimulation or irritation part. That's page 98. So we are reading bits of the book because we cannot read the whole of it. So who would like to read? The asanas too should be used.
I'm happy to read if nobody else wants to.
Please do.
Okay. The asanas too should be used with due caution, taking into account the physical state of the practitioner. For example, when you move the arms up, it places a direct strain on the heart. So people with cardiac problems should avoid postures with the arms raised. The moment you lift the arms, there is a strain on the heart. So we do not teach any standing poses for these pupils. This would be irritative and not helpful. It is very difficult for me to explain to Westerners the difference between stimulative exercise and irritative exercise. In jogging, making the heart beat very fast is irritating to the heart. In yoga, we do back bends, which are harder than jogging, but that does not irritate the heart because we don't get out of breath and our heartbeat is maintained in a rhythmic pattern throughout. So when we are teaching asanas, we have to find out what is actually invigorating and what is not invigorating. After invigorating exercise, there is absolutely no fatigue.
Okay, thank you. I think this point is really interesting. And I'm often asked by students if yoga is replacing these cardio exercises, cardiovascular exercises. Do I need to run or swim if I practice yoga? And my answer is always that yoga is great. For me, I don't need anything else, but it works differently on the body if you swim and if you run. And I know it's for some yoga teachers, it's like a taboo to admit that they are doing other physical activities other than asana practice. But my own teacher is swimming regularly, and I've met some senior teachers who are also hiking and doing other activities. But of course, I think that if you are doing these activities as a yoga practitioner, you're doing it differently from others. You are more attuned to your body and you are listening in a different way, in let's say in a yogic way. And I've talked to people, athletes, about how they practice, and they actually told me that their approach to their practice changed after they got exposed to yoga and this body awareness, body and emotional awareness of what is going on with them. And they run differently and they cycle differently and they swim differently because of the tools that they got in yoga. But this idea of irritation and stimulation is also interesting. It's, I would say, a fine line. You have to know when it is not stimulating, but now it is irritating. I think you can overdo it in yoga practice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've been asked several times to speak about the gender issues. We're going to page 100, where he addresses menstruation and women's practice. So here's a chance for me to say something about that. So my PhD was about yoga and women in Iyengar yoga. Who wants to read?
I'm happy to continue if nobody else
Yes,
wants.
please.
Another word of caution, which applies to all women practitioners, is that it is always advisable to avoid the practice of inverted poses during the menstrual period. The natural flow at the menstrual period is discharge, and if the discharge does not take place properly, you have headaches and go to the doctor for treatment. If there is excessive discharge, you also go for treatment. Now, if you do inverted poses at the time of menstruation, there will be a tendency to absorb instead of discharging. If the discharge is blocked by doing inverted poses, this may give certain coatings inside. To begin with, you may not find there is much effect, but as a result of the holding of the discharge through the effect of gravity, a coating may be formed inside, which may later lead to various diseases, including cysts, cancer, and so on. So it is advised not to do these poses at the time of menstruation. The poses which are advised at that time are forward bends where the discharge is not at all disturbed. In these poses, the natural flow is maintained, and at the same time, a physiological contraction takes place in the organ so that the drying is quicker.
Thank you. Do you know anything of this theory? Is it new to anyone here that inversions are not supposed to happen during menstruation? I think all of us are women here today.
Oh, I knew that. Yeah.
Okay, so for me as a researcher of yoga, it's amazing that women could practice yoga at all, because at times for different teachers, women just were not welcomed. So Iyengar says you are welcome, and even during menstruation, you don't need to stay at home. In today's India, sometimes women don't go to a yoga class because they are on their menstrual cycle. So, or in that phase. And so he says, you can come to class, but you just need to practice differently. And you are practicing differently because it's better for you, because it suits you better. So all this is remarkable to me. And that's why I invested 7 years of my life to research this concept of please come, but do it differently. It's for your own good. And the scientific part he talks about was already shown to be not the case. So they did research on astronauts where gravity is different, and they checked if there are cysts that are performing, since the menstrual blood is not drawn out, because the idea of not being upside down is that the blood will stay in. That's what he says, and that there will be coating. That comes to the idea of, again, what's the word? What's that condition?
Endometriosis?
Yes, endometriosis. And there are cases of endometriosis for fetuses and among men as well. And they don't know the cause of endometriosis yet, but it's not that most women with endometriosis are practicing headstand and shoulder stand during their menstrual cycle. So that's not the case. So science is now no longer supporting this idea. There are scientific theories from the 19th century that were also common during the 30s, so during Iyengar's childhood and adolescence. But these theories are, I wouldn't say proven to be wrong, but there is no support for it to be valid. I do find as a woman practitioner that practicing forward bends is really nice. And when I tried during my research to go into a headstand during my period, it felt wrong. Maybe I was biased, but also I felt like I need to engage my core muscles, my pelvic floor. It was not the right time to do that. I felt very shaky. And that is supported by research that during menstruation, the balance of the body is disturbed. So you are more prone to injuries and falling. So that's another reason not to engage in these practices. But just I'm saying he talks a lot about science here, and sometimes the theories that he is citing are not 100% valid, but maybe other reasons that are mentioned are, well, I wouldn't go against him, right? But I have to say this. And there is this idea of menstruation being waste. It's not written here, but it's written elsewhere. And it correlates with the Ayurvedic idea of mala. So the menstrual blood is waste, is mala, that needs to go out from the body. So if it is kept inside, it would create impurities and disease. And when I researched this topic and interviewed Iyengar yoga teachers, senior teachers, they also told me about this idea of menstrual blood being impure, being waste that we need to discard of, otherwise we will get sick. And that's another idea that takes us to the, let's say, the tradition of Ayurveda, but not necessarily a biological fact. Okay. So we continue with the...
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I'm not sure I understand. You're saying that period is not wasted blood?
Well,
obviously, like sweat. It's like saying sweat is not wasted. Of course, it's the way, isn't it? I don't understand. It's a way of the body to go through a certain cycle. So what's the...
yes,
why isn't it waste in your...
yes, it's the way, it's a natural way of the body to go through cycle. I wouldn't say it is impure. I would say it's a natural process. I wouldn't say that if you somehow keep your sweat inside, you will get impure.
No, but if you don't sweat, you have a problem.
Yes, of course. And if you don't menstruate or you don't go to the
Sweat.
toilet, you have a problem, of
Right.
course. Yes, I agree with that.
Just a verbal thing. It's
It's a conceptual thing, because then if you go into what is the meaning of mala and what is the place of menstruation in Indian culture and how it is related to mythology as being a curse put
okay.
on women.
No,
If you go into the traditional aspects of menstruation, you get a lot of baggage there.
Okay. Gotcha.
But if you don't go into waste, and in Ayurvedic term for bodily waste of impurity, and you just stay as it's a natural physical process, that means you are fertile. That means that I'm not glorifying it. I'm not saying you should be happy about it. It's something that occurs. It does not make you impure.
Right. Okay.
So now we go
Add
into,
something.
yes.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point, but I don't think that Iyengar also mentioned that it is a curse and that it's, he didn't stress so much that part of the Indian, like you said, mythology. He's just saying that it's a natural process that has to go out. So, and I think he's speaking more about the principle, in the sense that he doesn't say you're definitely going to get a cyst, you're definitely going to get endometriosis, you're definitely going. He said it might happen, and I don't think there is enough scientific research to show that that they had, like, let's say, yogic people who were doing during menstruation inversions for so many months and years, and then they develop or they didn't develop, so the science also cannot say this is not true. But he's speaking about the principle that if you do, it might not be good for you. Like, also, like if you have a gas and you're holding it, you're going to get the cramps in your stomach, or if you're holding the urine, the muscles can become weak, and then you will come to the point where you will not be able to hold. So, so at least this is how I see it, that he's speaking about the principle why it's not good, not that he's stressing that, it's only that way, and it's so
in my
it's
research, I went into depth into it, and I tried to look for more citations that are more clear about the approach towards menstruation, also in written materials and in oral teachings. And I must say that outside of Iyengar yoga, there are very popular yoga systems that do practice inversions during menstruation. I talked to teachers outside of Iyengar yoga, and they do practice inversions during menstruation.
Ashtanga.
Okay, that too. Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe one day there will be a research about how many Ashtangis that really practice daily for a prolonged time during their menstruation. Do they have any problems? But that's the research hasn't been done. And yeah, I want to stay on the positive side, that women in menstruation are welcome to practice Iyengar yoga during their menstruation, but they need to practice a bit differently. And the reasons why, and when he relies on scientific theories, I just want to mention that it's not that it's evident that this will cause that. It's just a way to caution students. But that causes other problems, because if you're cautioning me not to do something that takes up half an hour of a class, then why? Why can't I do it? I won't get harmed. So it's a big subject. I just wanted to touch upon it. Let's go to pregnancy, less debated part.
Want me to read?
Yes, please.
Okay. There's just a bit of a black area on the writing at the moment.
Is that better?
That's fine. Yeah. Finally, I would like to give a counsel of prudence to teachers who want to apply for themselves practices they may have seen others using in a specific context. Suppose somebody comes to a class when I'm teaching women in the 6th month of pregnancy, sees what I'm doing and says, "Oh, this is good yoga," and goes away thinking they know how to do work with pregnant women. They have not seen how I work from that 3rd month to the 9th month. They do not know that I have a different way of working for each month. And then they go away and think that they have seen me teaching certain poses to pregnant women. They know how to do it.
Thank you. That goes to the oral teachings when he's not writing things down in a systematic way, but that people come to India maybe for 1 month, maybe for half a year, but they come for a short time. They see what they see in the remedial classes and they want to take it to their own countries and use what they've seen. And it's happening until today that what we see in Pune is very partial. And we have to keep that in mind. Now, I think that the practice of Iyengar yoga for pregnancy, there were many books about it. In 1988, there was a book by one of Iyengar's students. And before that, there was the book of Le Boyer, which is more of pictures and less of Vanita, of Iyengar's daughter, but less about how to actually practice it. And throughout, there were many more. I think the most comprehensive one is by Rita Keller, Yoga for Motherhood. And she goes through the 9 months or 3 trimesters and then dissects it to a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced practitioner. And as you go and you see the different layers of this huge book, you understand the individualized approach that is needed. And then in pregnancy, there is a differentiation between what we call a normal or healthy pregnancy and pregnancy at risk. And then again, it gets a different category on its own. So again, he talks about the partial knowledge that we have and the word of caution that we have to take. Okay, so we have now the part when we have to finish. We won't read the part on the healing art, which is really interesting as well, where he speaks of the primary aim of yoga as freedom and beautitude, and how physical health is a secondary benefit. He speaks then about the Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, the 3 energy channels of the body, the nadis. He speaks about how proper practice of asana and pranayama can achieve a good flow in these energetic centers and create healing. And he speaks about himself and his own personal journey from what he calls a useless teacher at the age of 16. That was the first time he taught a group of women at the village of Tharwar in South India, and he didn't know how to teach. He learned, but he didn't learn how to teach. So that's what he called a useless teacher at the age of 16, and how he became an experienced practitioner who learned through taking on his students' pains and experimenting with solutions on his own body first. That's something that senior teachers always tell, how he looked at the body and then tried to understand on his own body how he can help that person. And his message is that a true healing ability comes through personal experience, through careful observation, and through continuous learning, which is very humbling to me. So we go now to our discussion questions. I prepared today 5 questions. You can answer one of them or all of them, and I'll stop the recording after I read them out. So the first question is, Iyengar discusses yoga as a healing art. Have you experienced any healing effects from your yoga practice? If so, what were they? So Michal already shared her story. And second is, Iyengar emphasizes caution and knowledge in yoga practice for health. How do you approach safety and learning in your own practice? And three, there is a quote, yoga is not primarily a therapeutic science, healing is a byproduct. How does this statement challenge or align with your current view of yoga? 4, this chapter suggests that modern practitioners often focus on physical benefits while missing deeper aspects. How do you maintain balance in your practice? And 5, can you share a specific moment when yoga shifted from being just exercise to something more healing for you? So thank you very much for this lovely discussion that we had. I'm really grateful for you sharing your own experiences and health issues and how yoga helped you. I don't take it for granted that we just open the mic and share, and I'm very grateful for this space. We continue to our next reading, which is chapter 4. Titled The Self and Its Journey. So we're going to have an interesting journey in the following 3 weeks. So I took into account the Christmas break many of you must have. So we will meet again in January, so next year.
January 5th at 10?
At the same time, yes. And I'll send you, of course, a reminder. And I'll make sure that the newsletter comes through with the special gift of the talk about the legacy of BKS Iyengar and the bit about Patanjali. And I'll keep on sending you messages through Facebook and WhatsApp about the reading schedule, the focus questions, and of course, inspirational quotes. And who knows what will be the next focus. We already had the ocean of milk story, the mythological story, and we had now Patanjali, and I'm preparing a surprise for each chapter that we can read together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Aggie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Aggie, for everything. It's really great what you do. How much
Yeah, it's awesome.
Because I think trying to read this on my own, as I've said before, it's just when we can come together and you sort of summarize it, it all seems to sort of gel. And then all the other bits that you do, all the research into the stories and the myths is fantastic. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Aggie.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Aggie. Bye.
Bye.